Mayor de Blasio, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mayor de Blasio, it is a beautiful morning in our neighborhood of New York City. You generally check in on your way from the gym to City Hall. We appreciate you for that this morning. A week removed about from us having one of the most devastating, perplexing, emotional elections in some time. How would you, first and foremost, Mayor de Blasio, how are you feeling after the election when Donald Trump is now our president?
Ebro, I'm feeling resolute. I felt some shock at first like everyone else, but it quickly turned to a sense of mission. I think I benefit from the fact personally that I went through the election of Ronald Reagan and the extraordinarily difficult time after that.
Right.
And, you know, people fought back, and ultimately a lot of what we feared was turned back. This is a different reality, unquestionably, and in many ways a more dangerous one.
Well, and also post, what was that, 2000, when Al Gore lost the election, which was a crazy turn of events.
True, and I got to tell you, I mean, a very important point for people to focus on, and a commonality with Al Gore. Al Gore won the popular vote. George W. Bush did not have a popular mandate. Neither does Donald Trump. We're waiting for the final numbers, but it's well over 500,000 votes more for Hillary Clinton now, and that's expected to go up. So that doesn't put a sugar coating on it, Ebro. It says this was not, a landslide. This was not a substantive mandate for Donald Trump. It was an electoral college victory, unquestionably. But the people of this country, in many ways, did not buy into this agenda. And another thing I feel very strongly is the generation coming up can and will be the difference makers. I think it is a generation with superior understanding of the challenges we face. I see it with my own children. I see it with many activists I know. They are more sober about how we got to this place and what we have to do to get out of it. And I actually feel some hope in another generation of leaders coming up.
What, as citizens of New York City and even greater tri-state, I know you have relationships with the mayor of Jersey City and areas of Connecticut. You guys all, because we live in such close proximity, I know you guys communicate a little bit. What should we expect as citizens of the tri-state and specifically New York City from you as Donald Trump tries to set a national tone that feels like it might still be anti-immigrant and definitely anti it just feels hateful.
Yeah.
What is your response, and how do we manage New York City and the tone here in the city?
We have to resist, and we have to be organized all over the country to fight against policies that are extreme and that undermine people we represent. I think it's, again, history teaches us a lot. We were not as well prepared in the past to fight back. I think both because of the generation coming up and because we've been through these other defeats, we know a lot more about what we have to do now. Trump on 60 Minutes talked about taking away a woman's right to choose.
Yep.
Yes.
That's going to create an extraordinary upheaval in this country if he tries to do that. And we have to organize people to fight back, and then that's going to change the overall politics of the country. So in his extremism may be the seeds for bigger changes in a progressive direction, simply because people will react so strongly and will organize and fight back. We have to be leaders in New York City, because these values that go against the values in New York City. This is like something I talked about the day after the election. This city has always been open to immigrants, to people from the entire world as part of our success. This city's always believed in respecting all religions. This city always believed people deserved a shot to make it economically. And what Trump's talking about, remember, this is a billionaire. He's talking about giving tax cuts to billionaires and corporations. Mm-hmm. He's talking about deporting people. He's talking about taking away a woman's right to choose. His supporters, even a lot of them, when they see the totality of that, are going to turn against him.
Well, I think what we've learned on this show is, and by taking calls, and shout to all the people who still listen to me despite that I scream things like F Donald Trump on the radio and you voted for him. So love to y'all for at least having an open mind. Many of them have called in and expressed the fact that the true thing they only care about in Donald Trump's rhetoric is the opportunity for jobs to stay in the states. They ignore the racial parts. They ignore what they deem to be like things that just aren't going to happen, either because they're too young to realize how crazy things could get in the United States and have in the past, and many of them only knew Obama. Like they're 25, 28 years old.
That's all they've seen.
And the only thing they paid attention to in the last 8 years is Obama. So they don't really know. Those of us that have been around and paying attention a little longer know that the tone set by the president can make things get really, really crazy if we're not careful. Mayor de Blasio, do you believe in any of that with the jobs with regard to Donald Trump? Is he going to be successful in that?
Look, we have no way to tell what he's going to do. We have an obligation, at least those of us in government, if he's going to do things that will give people a better economic life, we have to try and find some common ground. But it remains to be seen whether any of that's going to happen. And he's quite definite about the fact that he wants to give tax cuts to the wealthy and corporations, which will work against the people's interest and actually cause the economy to become even more skewed and stratified in favor of the 1%. So I think this was an election first and foremost about economics. And all of us who want to resist the intolerance and the divisiveness also have to understand we have to talk to people around this country who are hurting economically of all backgrounds, of all races. And we have to show them a better way forward in terms of economic fairness.
How can we do, and Mayor, in that, and not to cut you off, poor white people, poor black people, poor people of all backgrounds, working class of all backgrounds are saying the same things. Like, you hear people that voted for Donald Trump saying things like America has not lived up to its promise. That's the same thing that anybody from any walk of life that is struggling to make ends meet for their family feels like. How can we all get on the same page? And is it really just that racial sometimes?
I think it begins with, from my point of view as a Democrat, for Democrats, for progressives, to have an unquestionably clear, sharp message about challenging the 1%, about creating an economy based on work, not wealth, doing the things that will make the wealthy pay their fair share in taxes. These kind of things are going to move people and appeal to people across the racial spectrum. And you're right, it will unify people because working people and middle-class people feel cheated. And they have every right to feel cheated. There was no real reform after the recession and the crash on Wall Street. There was no real effort to reverse the gains of the 1%, so people feel cheated. And if Democrats and progressives don't give them a crystal clear understanding of how we're going to change that, of course they're going to feel dissatisfied and disconnected.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who definitely feel dissatisfied and disconnected, Mayor de Blasio. And let me ask you on that note, are you reaching out to mayors from other cities? Is there some sort of collective national effort around progressive thinking that people can pay attention to?
There will be, for sure. The mayors of this country have a real common cause here in protecting our people, all our people. Because when you think of all the people in the course of this campaign that Donald Trump has insulted, it makes up the vast majority of all of our cities. And we have to protect people's interests. We have to fight back against his plans that will simply make this an even more unequal economy. And I think there's going to be real energy at the grassroots. You're seeing it in the protests around the country. But mayors have to lead the way because we're the closest to the ground, and it's our obligation to protect our people.
And we also have to make sure the message is out there. Look, I'm for protest. I'm not for violence.
That's right. And let the protesters, the numbers and the passion of the protesters will affect the outcome here. But you're exactly right. Violence is not only immoral, it will fundamentally send the wrong message.
Yes.
And it'll be used against the ideas of the protesters.
That's right. So, Mayor de Blasio, we have a list here today of items that I think you want to address. First and foremost, nationwide stop and frisk, which we heard Donald Trump speak about on his way into his presidency. We've seen Rudy Giuliani may have a position in Trump's cabinet. We know what Giuliani did to this city. We know what Giuliani, we know he sounds crazy, like he's lost his mind. But what do you have to say, and what are you going to do to make sure that stop and frisk doesn't return in our city?
The fact I'm going to say to people all over the country, the unconstitutional use of stop and frisk did not make us safer. It was not only morally wrong, it actually did not make us safer. When we took away that policy, this city got safer 3 years running. And the goal has to be to bring the community together, and you can't do that when you have the unconstitutional use of stop and frisk creating a wedge. Now, what people need to hear is the federal government cannot tell a local police force to use a policy like that if we believe it's wrong for our city and our people.
So the government cannot impress that upon us.
No, because the constitutional system, it's got its strengths and weaknesses, but it really gives a lot of power to states and localities. And the federal government doesn't get to tell us how to police our streets.
That's right.
That's really important for people to know. They can threaten to take away money, but they cannot tell us how to police our streets. And we are not going back to a broken policy of stop and frisk. That will never happen on my watch.
There's been a rise in hate crimes in New York City and a rise in hate crimes nationally. Are you aware of this? Are you paying attention to this? Or is it just media? Is this just media fodder for clicks and tune-ins? Is it getting worse in this short period after Donald Trump?
Yeah, there's no question. We have seen an uptick around the country in hate speech and hate crimes, and we have to be very, very clear we won't tolerate it. In this city, we do not tolerate it. There are real consequences. Anyone involved in a hate crime, there will be serious consequences. We'll bring the full force of NYPD to bear. And that's part of what we have to do. Some people now, unfortunately, take a signal from Donald Trump's rhetoric that it's open season against all the different kinds of people that Trump insulted and denigrated in his campaign. Again, this is where the local level matters. There's not a federal police force. There's local police forces. It's up to us in New York City and police forces all around the country and leaders all around the country to stand up immediately whenever there's any instance of hate and build community resistance to that and build community unity against the hate.
In that, there's also a note I have here. Have you paid attention to this new alt-right movement, this white supremacy rhetoric, and some of the players that may be in our cabinet, in our White House?
Right, and it's happening right now. Trump named Bannon as one of the leaders of this far-right complex. He's named him to be senior advisor. This means that an organization that's been closely linked to white supremacists is going to have a representative in the White House. Now, even with administrations I fundamentally disagreed with, certainly over the last century, we've never seen anything like that. And this is another area where people need to fight back. We need to hold Trump accountable for anything he does that encourages hate and division. Because think about it, again, he does not have a popular vote mandate. And the more extreme he is, the more people fight back, the more it takes away his power. Because that office is not in a vacuum. And Lord knows we saw that the hard way with President Obama, who came in with much more enthusiasm and mandate, but was in many ways limited by protests from the right side around the country. Well, progressives need to remember that if Trump continues in an extremist fashion, we also can organize people to fight back and draw a line in the sand. And that can change a lot of what Trump intends to do.
But we have to stay focused, we have to communicate, we have to stay diligent.
We also have to remember that as painful as it is, Ebro, and as depressing, and it is depressing, it is not an excuse to stand back. We have to engage the battle even more forcefully.
Yes.
And that's what history teaches us. This is one moment, and it's a moment that could have been avoided. But now that it's here, if we step back, then we only give him power.
Mayor de Blasio, people are angry, and here on the show we've always stressed the fact that yes, protesting without violence is the way we have to go, but how else can people get involved?
Well, I think there's going to be an opportunity as each issue engages. Trump is going to name people to his cabinet. Some of those people are going to have a tough time getting approved, and there's going to be a fight over them. He's going to name a Supreme Court justice at some point. There's going to be a fight over that. And there's going to be a fight over a lot of the policies he tries to put in place. We have to recognize that all over this country, the more disruption that's caused peacefully as each of these actions is taken, the more it will change the trajectory of things. So people have a chance to get involved in each and every one of these issues in terms of protest, in terms of pushing their elected representatives to not accept these extremist policies. And a lot of people are represented by Republicans, you know, in states all over the country, including in the tri-state area. There's Republicans in the House who represent parts of the tri-state area. They need to feel that their constituents are telling them, if you support a lot of this agenda, it's going to be a fundamental problem for us, and that's going to affect their representatives. They need to hear those voices.
Mayor de Blasio, we thank you for your time, and I hear the passion in your voice, and hopefully, I mean, it's still very early in this new presidency. As a matter of fact, it hasn't even officially started. So, there's a lot of things that we can speculate about, but we hope to have you up again and calm us and give us some insight.
I'll be with you regularly, and I really appreciate the conversations we have, and people need to, in this moment, people need to talk to each other, think together, organize together. But I finished where I started, Ebro. The generation coming up is much better equipped than when I was the same age. Much better equipped to fight back in this situation.
Mayor de Blasio, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, brother.
All right.
Take care, everyone.